everyone, this is Katee Sackhoff from Another Life, and you are listening to the Man Cave Chronicles.
Welcome to another episode of the Man Cave Chronicles.
Welcome to the party, pal!
You're my boy, Blue!
Yo, Adrian!
A podcast with interviews of amazing guests from the world of pop culture.
Oh, yeah!
TV.
Nice!
Movies.
Oh, I love the movies!
Comedy and more. From deep inside the Man Cave, your host, Elias.
Katee, welcome to the cave.
Thank you so much for having me.
How are you? What's new with you?
I'm good. Just, at home in the middle of a construction site and getting ready to leave and go do another episode of The Flash, actually, this next week.
Oh,
so it'll be a
awesome.
nice, it'll be a nice break from the construction noise, to be honest.
I gotta ask, have you had a day off for the last 20 plus years?
That's so funny. I would normally tell you no. But this year, waiting for the pickup of the second season of Another Life is the longest I haven't worked in my entire life.
Really?
And it was an entire year, actually. It'll be a month short of a year, purely because of the episode of The Flash. So
Wow.
That's the only thing that I've done in this year. So it was one of the reasons why we started the YouTube channel, was because I was sitting at home bored. I couldn't work because I'm under contractual obligation with Netflix. And so I was looking for a creative outlet so I wouldn't find myself getting depressed or down about the lack of work.
Wow. But you do need the break once in a while.
I do. Yeah, it's funny. I do relax better than a lot of people. I think I do this very quick relax thing where I can sit on the couch and waste an entire day watching Hallmark movies better than anybody. And I feel no shame whatsoever about doing that because I work so hard all the time that for me, that's just like a day off.
Yeah, there you go. So, I did a little research on you, and, like I said, everybody knows you from, of course, Battlestar Galactica, The Flash, your new show.
Right.
You've done so much, but I want the listeners to get a little bit more know about you. Where are you originally from?
So I'm originally from a small town in Oregon called St. Helens. And then my parents moved to Portland when I was about 13.
Oh, wow. Well, how was it growing up there?
It was great. My dad grew up there too. It was small town living, one street light, and it's bigger now. They put the freeway in, and it's more of a through city now, or town, I guess, rather. But it was great. We ran around and got into trouble and didn't come home till dinner time. And, it was a very, very safe, sheltered existence.
Wow.
And then my parents chose to move us to the big city when we were just before we started middle school. I think that they just thought that my dad really wanted us to experience living in a bigger city.
Oh, wow. So growing up, what were you into as a kid?
I think everything that people would stereotypically think that I was into. I was into playing in the dirt. We lived next to a farm, and I would harass the cows and, the horses, and sort of get lost in barns, and I would go, owl hunting, and where not real owl hunting, but where we would just go hunt gray owls and try and find them in the barns and the barn owls, and just, find them, not actually hunt them. That sounded so terrible. But, and, but I also, played with Barbies and played, swam in the river, and just had a real, wholesome, sort of very boring upbringing.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. I actually lived in a farm for a year in Greece, so I know all about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was great. It was honestly, my childhood was so important for my career as an actor, because it really inspired my imagination from such a young age, because we lived so far away from friends. And granted, we played with friends and stuff, but for the most part, my mom always said, just go, just go outside. I don't want to see you till dinner time. And we would go play and use our imagination. And I was constantly, pretending like I was a pirate in the treehouse and running around with my brother and building forts and, all the things that I look back on so fondly, but that it was so fiercely important for my imagination as a child.
It's interesting. So when you were growing up, did you know you wanted to get into the acting world?
Oh God, no. No, I was an athlete for many years. And I was a swimmer, and that was just my plan. I'd always planned on, at the very least, swimming in college. And, I had these, grand aspirations that were probably pipe dreams of, Olympic dreams in my future. But for sure, I would have swum in college. But I got hurt, and it's and that was at 15, and I really had to sort of reevaluate what I was going to do. I didn't want to go to college unless I was swimming. I was never a great student. I didn't really enjoy school very much. And so I was looking for something that would get me out of my town and to sort of be creative. And it honestly, I fell into it. But my mom always was looking back that, I was the kid that was 2 years old with tap shoes on, dancing on the kitchen table. So it sort of, I feel like, was inevitable that I would end up where I'm at.
Yeah. When you told your parents you wanted to get to acting, how did that go?
I think when I first started telling them at 15, I think they thought that I was just, I was a kid where my goals and my career goals changed every day. And I think when I set on something, I think when I started asking for furniture for birthdays and Christmases and plates, that they went, oh, she's really leaving. And by the time I left home, I had an entire 1-bedroom U-Haul filled with hand-me-down clothes, like furniture and plates and all enough to furnish an entire one. But I was the only 18-year-old that moved to Los Angeles with an entire 1-bedroom house filled with furniture. Wow. Because I'd started collecting. And I think when that happened, I think my parents went, oh, this is happening.
So how did you get started in acting?
So my mom had found, and I did plays in high school for fun, but my mom had found an ad in a paper to be Kirsten Dunst's body double in a Lifetime movie she was doing. And my mom was like, just get out of the house. It was right after my injury, and she was like, just go do something. And so I went there. She took me down, and Kirsten and I have very different body types, so it didn't work at all. But the woman had said, can you act? And I thought, of course, I'm bulletproof at 15. I was like, of course I can. And she sent me home with some sides, and I went back like the next day, and my mom helped me memorize, and I got the part. And that Taft-Hartley'd me into the union. And for anyone who knows anything about SAG, that was instrumental in my career, because basically I didn't have to work to get into the union. The producers paid a fine and just got me into the union. Wow. Because they wanted me for the part. And it was the jumping off point for my career, because the director of that Lifetime movie convinced my mom to bring me to LA and introduce me to my manager and agent. And my agent is still my manager today. And that was over 20 years ago.
Wow. Now, did you take any acting classes after that?
I didn't. So I absolutely didn't. I went to one acting class, and, I'm sure it was just the wrong class, but I went to an acting class where they subscribe to the notion that you need to break people down and tear them down to build them back up. And I, at 17, thought that was the biggest load of horse shit that I'd ever heard, and decided that the best acting class was going to be working and actually working. And, at the end of the day, what I always equate my career to and my level of acting to was always just compulsive lying. Like, that's what acting is to me, is that if you can convince another person of an emotion or something that happened, you're acting. Yeah. So it was just finding a way to convince people that what I was saying was the truth. And so I just, set out to, I was constantly doing scenes at my house. I'd memorize, scenes from movies and do them in the mirror. And that was really the only thing I did.
What was some of the some of your favorite movies?
And Die Hard was always a big one.
Everybody's.
Yeah, Alien was a big one. I was a big fan of, God, what movies was I a fan of as a kid that I would actually memorize? I did a lot of like Meg Ryan movies, a lot of her movies. What other things did I do? I was a big Clueless was a big one. I memorized like everything from Clueless. Heathers was a big one. I did Heathers as well. So I would go through these movies and I would memorize monologues, and I would see if I could deliver the monologue the same way. And so I think the beginning of my career was pretty much just faking it until I learned that I was actually acting.
That's interesting. So, like I mentioned earlier, the listeners know you from, of course, Battlestar Galactica. Like, while you were growing up, were you like into the whole like sci-fi thing at all?
I was. My dad raised me on science fiction. My dad and I had this like love of film together because he made me his little buddy and was showing me inappropriate movies from the time I was like 6, and I was watching like Predator and Alien and Lethal Weapon and like these movies that you should never movies you should never show a child. Forbidden Planet is my dad's favorite movie, and we watched it over and over and over again. And so he sort of taught me from a very young age that this is all fantasy, and so I really did get into this business, and the jobs that I chose when I actually had the luxury to start having an opinion about the jobs that I took were very much geared toward what my dad would want to watch, because that's what I did growing up, was watch movies with my dad.
So like the fans call you like a sci-fi icon and a goddess. Like, how does that make you feel?
I think the character is, I think the character is. I think the character of Starbuck was incredibly instrumental in the change of empowerment in women in film. But I don't think that I was. I think that I was just the person that was in the right place at the right time, that was lucky enough to get the job.
Yeah. So do you agree like Battlestar is like more popular like now than it was back then?
100%. Yeah. It continues to just grow legs, and it's just, I don't think that there is an end in sight to that show. Especially since they're bringing it back again within that world. I think that it could only just, inspire more people to go back and watch the original. Again, well, not the original, the first remake again.
Do you remember your audition for that?
Oh my God, I do. Yeah, no, I auditioned like 7 times for it.
Really?
Oh my God, so many times. When I first got into this business, because I was petite and blonde, and 17, everybody pigeonholed me into ditzy blonde roles, and I played the crap out of ditzy blonde bimbos that you really wanted. Like I died in Halloween. I got my head cut off, and people like cheered in the theater. Like, those are the characters I played, like just dumb blondes. And I was so excited when Battlestar sort of like, came into my hands. I read this and I was like, this, you gotta be kidding me. I have a chance at this. And they were like, well, you have an audition. And the role was written for somebody that was about 10 years older than me. And absolutely not who I was. But, I went to my first audition in heels, because, that's what I did. Like, I always wore heels, and I went in heels and a pair of jeans and a t-shirt, I think. And I did my reading, and I thought I did a great job. And then they passed. And I was like, no, just give me another shot. So I went back and I convinced them to see me again. They were like, she's too young and she's just not tough enough. And so I was like, okay. And so every single time I just kept like hanging on by a thread in these auditions, and they just kept moving me forward. And then my final screen test was actually against Grace Park. We both tested for Starbuck. It was just, it was just one of those things. Like I said, I was in the right place at the right time. And one of the producer's ex-wives was actually watching, they've told this story many times. They were watching the audition tapes in fast forward, which is what they do. They literally watch them in fast forward because there's so many people. And she walked by the screen, and had been lamenting about how he, they couldn't find Starbuck. And she walked by the screen and pointed at the screen and went, "What are you talking about? That's her right there." And it was me.
Jeez.
And he was like, "What?" And he stopped the tape and actually watched it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So all these, like, because like I said, I did some research on you in like all these forums and everything. Let's put it like, what do you say, like the word, like not rest in peace, but like your character. She died,
Yeah.
right? She died, right? Because everybody's
well, yeah,
like,
I mean, it's been 15 years
Yeah.
at this point. I feel like if you haven't seen it, like you need, like, there's no spoiler. You can't hold
Yeah.
spoilers for 20 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, she was not the same character at the end that she was in the beginning, by no means. She was a different entity.
Yeah.
And she was absolutely not Starbuck anymore. Starbuck died.
yeah, there you go. So now,
Yeah.
you star on Netflix's Another Life. How's that compared to going from Battlestar to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it took me a long time to want to do science fiction again. Once you hit something out of the park like Battlestar, you can't just go back to sci-fi.
Yeah.
I mean, that was my biggest fear, is that I'd go back to sci-fi and it's terrible.
Yeah.
And so I took time off. I went and, did a Western for 7 years, and that had a great time on Longmire, and, just like really got to play like a normal person for a change. And then when the opportunity came up to produce my own show at Netflix, I was ready to go into sci-fi again, but I didn't want to do Battlestar Galactica 2.0. That was never my intention. I wanted to create something that was much more akin to what my dad and I would have watched when I was a kid, which is popcorn television.
Yeah.
Something that you truly have to suspend your disbelief to get into and enjoy. I think that so much of the time now in television and in film, we're looking for things to be metaphors for the human condition, and not everything has to be so heavy. Some things can just be popcorn.
Yeah.
And not have to make sense, and not have to be this or be that, or be some exquisite form of, higher learning in creativity. It's just, it can just be fun to watch. And that's what we set out to create with Another Life, was something that was fun to watch. And it is.
Yeah. How were you approached for this show?
So I had been making the rounds, pitching a show that I created called Rain. And in the middle of pitching that, my producing partner unexpectedly passed away. And so I shelved that project out of respect. And just sort of, for me, it just felt like that had run its course, and I was done with that. And I just wanted to sort of put it to bed. In the process, though, I think that what it did was it made all these networks start thinking about me in a creative producer sort of way.
Yeah.
And when the option came up to go do sci-fi at Netflix and produce the show, thankfully my name was in the hat. And I got that opportunity, which is great.
Well, now for the listeners that haven't watched the show yet, without spoiling it, can you tell what it's about?
Absolutely. So it's pretty easy. An alien artifact lands on Earth, and we don't know if it's good or bad. And my character is sent out into space to determine the origin of the artifact. And she is she is a retired astronaut, military-based astronaut, and she is tasked with leading this very young crew into space to determine what the origin of the artifact is. And everything goes wrong.
Well, yeah, that's how it's supposed to be, right?
It's how it's supposed to be. It's one of the things. So one of the creative choices I made when we were talking about this show is that I wanted to create cryotubes, because if you're sending a crew of people out into space to save the world, you're not going to just send 10 people. You're going to send replacements for those 10 people. So what I loved about that was that it provided us the opportunity to not only bring in actors potentially for shorter periods of time, because every character on this show, including myself, is replaceable.
Yeah.
We all have backups in cryo sleep. And that's what I loved, is that no one's safe. This isn't a show where it's 10 people on the ship that are no one's ever going to die. And I love that. I love that you never know what's going to happen.
What can you tell us about your character that you play?
Nico, like I said, is military, but she's a retired astronaut, and she was second in command years ago on a ship that exploded, and she lost a lot of her crew. And so she retired and decided to become a teacher. So she's basically a teacher at like NASA, if you will. And when this artifact lands on Earth, she's sort of pulled out of retirement and forced to go by the military to lead this crew. She leaves behind a husband who's a scientist and a 7-year-old daughter, and she realizes that the best and only way to protect her family is to leave them and go figure out what's out there and what the threat really is.
How did you prepare for the role? Like, did you do like any kind of research for that?
No, my acting style is so heavily sort of existing in fantasy and make believe. That for myself, I do absolutely do research 100%. I make sure I'm prepared as far as what the character is going through emotionally, and any expertise that my character has, I definitely prepare for. But I'm not going to go study at NASA, is what I'm saying. I'm not smart enough. They'd turn me away and like laugh. I definitely, for me, our characters get woken up straight out of cryo sleep. So for me, one of the things that I really wanted to focus on was I wanted my character physically to look depleted and dehydrated and sort of very sinewy. And for myself, I naturally sit about, 10, 15 pounds heavier than where I got down to for the show. But it was really important to me because I knew the first image that people were going to see of this show was that. And I really wanted to make sure that it sold who this woman was. And I wanted them to see the muscle and the strength and the fatigue and all of these things in a visual. So for me, that was incredibly difficult. And, and then I just trying to put myself in the shoes of a mother was really hard. I don't have kids. And for me, it was really hard for me to understand how a woman could leave a child to protect a child. And that understanding took me the longest, actually. And it was a conversation that I had with my mom. And that my mom was the one that said to me, sometimes the best thing you can do for your children is to walk away from them to protect them. And she said, and parents make those hard decisions every day. And it was interesting talking to my mom about it. So, but that's pretty much how I prepared for it. And then just being in the writer's room and, having a hand in casting and all that fun stuff was really cool.
My next question was actually, like, how much fun are you having being, like, producing the show?
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it is absolutely a lot of fun. For me, it's just an evolution of sort of my career, and sort of felt like the next step for myself was to learn a bit more and to really sort of be like a sponge. And I'm learning so much from, the producers on the show, like Noreen Halpern is a seasoned producer, and she's really been helping me along the way. And I'm just having a great time.
And I did just see yesterday that I got picked up for another season, right?
Yeah, we did. We definitely got picked up for a second season, which is awesome. So that's great. That's great. Especially since there's construction going on at my house. I can now pay for it.
When is that going to start filming?
Not till early next year for sure, just because if we were to start now, we'd have so many breaks with holidays that it just didn't make sense. So we'll start next year for sure.
So you mentioned earlier The Flash. I love The Flash, by the way. And you have a recurring role. Good. You have a recurring role as Amunet. How fun has it been playing that character in that universe?
She is by far the funnest character I've ever played because she's insane. Like, I've never played like crazy wackadoo crazy before, and that she is like she's an opportunist, which is really great. She's not evil, she's not good, she's very much an opportunistic person, and sort of she's all about making money. And that's what I love about her, is that she's just, she's really fun, and nothing's off the table with her. You know, I could do anything I want, and it makes sense for Amunet. You know, I was talking to the writers about, I had this dream and I had this thought that was very funny. You know, she says at one point that Norvok is her third favorite henchman, and we know that Killer Frost is her first. And I was like, well, who's her second favorite henchman? Where's that guy?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, we should do an entire episode with Amunet holding a baby. And she never even acknowledges the fact that she's holding this baby until the very end. You realize that she's babysitting for her second favorite henchman because she needed him for a job. And this was the only way she could get her second favorite henchman back. So, and I know it sounds ridiculous and totally unrealistic, but it totally works for Amunet and the Flash. And so I think that's I think it's exactly who she is someone that would babysit a henchman's child to pull them out of retirement.
And most of your scenes are with Danielle. How would you describe the chemistry with you two?
I adore Danielle so much. I love working with her. She's really, really fun. I love the Killer Frost and I really like the Caitlin storyline more. I love that, how Amunet just seems to want to be a mentor for Caitlin. But I also, this episode is mostly myself and Iris, which is really fun. Wow. I'm really excited to work with Candace for a change.
Do you think we're going to see you in more than one episode this year?
Well, that's the thing when you play a henchman or, a baddie that never dies, is that they can always bring you back, right?
Yeah. You're right about that.
So maybe.
Yeah. So I did read that. First of all, how did you get into the whole voiceover world? How did you get into that?
Yeah, it was honestly just by chance. You know, Seth Green had asked the cast of Battlestar Galactica to come in and play themselves in a sketch. And while we were in there, they had us play some extra characters. And one of the characters they asked me to play was Bitch Puddin'. And it just sort of happened that way, and she became a fan favorite. And then from that became all of a sudden video games started popping up, and then Star Wars popped up in BO-Katan, and so it just sort of keeps coming now, which is great. I really enjoy it, and I get to play characters that you don't know if you ever get to play them in reality. You know, I mean, BO-Katan was, as far as I was concerned, the closest I was ever going to get to Star Wars, which it was to me. I was like, awesome. I'll do an animated version of Star Wars. Come on. Who wouldn't? Yeah.
And it's coming back, right? The Clone Wars?
It is coming back. Clone Wars is coming back, yeah. So that'll be really fun.
Yeah. You never know. Now that with Disney Plus coming out, they're doing all those Star Wars series.
Yeah, you never know.
You might get a call.
You never know.
Yeah. So out of all the roles you've portrayed, which one was your favorite one that you've done?
You know, it's funny. I have been so blessed to play so many amazing characters. I think everything I've ever done is a character, and I honestly can't pick. I mean, they all have aspects of them that are my favorite for some reason, but I don't think there is one. I really don't.
It's interesting. Would you ever want to do a sitcom? Would you ever want to get into the comedy world?
Yeah, of course I would. It's funny because the only time I've been allowed to do comedy is overtly crazy comedy. So when I did an episode of Workaholics and played a drug addicted homeless woman with Adam Devine, which was really fun. And then when I played myself in Big Bang Theory. Yeah. So, I mean, it's something that, I would absolutely love to do more, but this business has a hard time letting you out of your box.
Yeah.
So, you never know.
You never know.
Yeah.
Tell us about your YouTube channel that you started.
Yeah. Well, like I said in the beginning, it was honestly, so many people in the last 5-6 years have been reaching out to me about things that I didn't honestly think that I knew much about, what motivates me and how I, work out at the gym and what kind of food I eat and how I take care of myself and how I stay positive all the time, seemingly, and all of these things. And then I realized that social media was not, in my opinion, the right place to talk about those things, because it felt, in a sense, sort of work related. And, at the time, it's like 140 characters on Twitter. How do you explain to someone what motivates you? Yeah. So I was always looking for a way to branch out of that. And people had been talking to me about doing a YouTube channel and being funny on YouTube and doing funny things on YouTube. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do. But then I started talking to my producing partner, Robin Gadsby, a lot more last year. And he was like, well, and we just started brainstorming what it would look like, purely just as friends at that point. And it really I realized that there was a space on YouTube where we could create episodes that were fun to watch, that had a message, and really sort of gave people what they were asking for me to give them, which was a piece of myself, but also those little bits of motivation and how I live a whole life and wellness and mental health and all of these things that we sort of like touch on the YouTube channel. It's been really great. And we decided to break it down into 3 seasons of 10 every year. So it fits with the rest of my workload. And it's been really great. The feedback has been fantastic. We've grown over 600% in like the last, couple months. Wow. And we're just coming up with season 2 now and trying to figure out what we want to sort of do for season 2, which is really fun. It was just sort of a natural sort of, it at first it felt like it was going to be a stretch for me to figure out how to do this and let people into my life. And then I realized that once we started, that there was a lot of knowledge that I may not have myself, but that I could be a conduit for. And so that we could actually do episodes about how alcohol affects your body and do it in a funny way, and how I train for this, and doing things that scare you, and how you eat on a budget, and what kind of healthy foods are good for you, and suicide prevention, and all of these different topics were in season 1. And so it's been really fun, and Robin and I are just trying to figure out what to do for season 2 now.
So when you're not doing the YouTube channel and you're not working, on your downtime, what do you enjoy doing?
It's pretty similar to everything else. I spend a lot of time working out. I love being outside and being physically active. I love challenging my body and my mental state to push past my limits and do things that I didn't think I was capable of. So I spend a lot of time doing that sort of thing. And then I've got 3 dogs that I spend tons of time with, and hang out with my boyfriend and sort of, do all of those things. Love to cook. I'm obsessed with travel. We're hoping to do some YouTube episodes about travel. Because I really, really absolutely, like, if in a perfect world, if I could figure out what I was going to do for the rest of my life, it would be find ways to work out and travel for the rest of my life and be paid for it. I don't think that's possible, but
you never know.
A girl can dream.
Yeah. So where do you see yourself like 10 to 20 years from now?
I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. I know where I see myself tomorrow. Yeah. And I know where I see myself next week. But I used to live in the future when I was younger, because I was so worried that I would make a mistake and miss out on something, or that I wouldn't achieve enough. And I realize the older I get, the more important it is to you can plan for the future, but you really, really, really have to live now. So I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen and where I want to be and what my life's going to look like.
And there's nothing wrong with that either.
Yeah.
Every day's a new day.
Yeah. It's been for me, it's been a big help for my sort of my mental health and the pressure I always put on myself to succeed, to take a step back and really just focus on right now.
Is there any other other projects that you have coming out that you can tell us about?
I can't tell you about
Okay.
them, but yeah, there
Yeah.
definitely are, and
Yeah.
I'm over the moon excited and just like
That's
ecstatic and can't wait to talk about it at some point. But I have signed the biggest non-disclosure agreement of my life, and my mouth is staying shut for now.
We'll have to get you back on just to talk about those.
Yeah, absolutely.
And lastly, how can the listeners find you on social media?
So I've got those real creative handles because someone else has mine. So I am the real Katee Sackhoff on Instagram. I think I'm just Katee Sackhoff on Twitter, and the YouTube channel, which is something that I think everyone should check out. It's really fun. Is just Katee Sackhoff TV right now, and we're really excited about it.
Katee, this was a blast. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate it. Thank